It's Rob Brown here with a bonus episode of the Accounting Influencers podcast, where we bring to you influential leaders in the accounting, fintech, bookkeeping world and talk about the issues of the day. And in a part two of these bonus episodes, we're focusing on an awards project that was run by Ignition called the Top 50 Women in Accounting. This was a very involved process involving nominations from all over the world with 2,500 female professionals, of which 50 were chosen. I was one of the judges on the panel. We had Rebecca Mihalovic, one of the organizers from Ignition, doing a bonus episode like this. I'm thrilled to have with me today from the ICB, Ami Copeland. Good day to you.
Hello. I'm so pleased to be here, Rob. Thanks for having me.
It's beautiful to have you in with us, Ami. For people that haven't come across you, tell us a bit about what you do in the organization you represent.
Well, I am the CEO of ICB. That's the Institute of Certified Bookkeepers. So we are the governing body for bookkeepers. And we are, in a world in which there are lots and lots of accountancy professional bodies, we are the only one that's dedicated to bookkeepers, which makes us very unique. And bookkeepers, we believe, are incredibly unique within the accounting space. And part of that is because we are majority women. So 78% of our members are women, which makes it a really, really special place to work. But I became CEO at the beginning of this year, and ICB is all about empowering bookkeepers because we can see that bookkeepers empower businesses. So we are an organization of around 15,000 students and members in the UK, but we have sister bodies around the world and students all over the place. So for a lot of people, bookkeeping can be quite obviously a fun career, but a little bit of an alternative to that quite kind of tried and tested accountancy route, which usually involves working in a firm, trying to get to partner, qualifying through possibly a degree route. So we offer a little bit of an alternative to that kind of common journey. And as a result, we seem to have attracted a lot of women. And I think it's partly because our courses are quite accessible for people who are studying around other commitments. So usually for women still, it is quite often the childcare. So I think that's probably why we've attracted such a strong number of women. But what it's done is made our community so warm and welcoming and really, really supportive. So it's a really lovely place to work.
There's so much good stuff in there I'd love to unpack. I'm just thinking of how warm your community is. I'm thinking of our church, and the women's meetings are much more popular than the men's meetings because women get together, they talk, they are community, they are social creatures. Men, we tend not to do that unless it's specifically revolved around an activity. Let's eat something, let's blow something up, let's throw something at something, let's play something, and then you will get men together. But the conversation generally is quite superficial. But we do know that if women are at the heart of a community, it will be vibrant. That's basically what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, very vibrant. We're good at connecting, and we have lots of gentlemen as well. They are very welcome and people on every end of the spectrum. Cool. But just, fundamentally an incredibly welcoming, supportive community. And what our members say a lot is part of that is because obviously they're, very good at communicating, but it's because there's so much business out there. And one of the really nice things we're witnessing is, I think, the end client or the businesses recognizing more than ever that bookkeeping is really fundamental to the process of getting all of your numbers right and running a successful business. And what they get from these amazing bookkeepers, most of whom are women, is this ongoing support. And so that supportiveness that they give to the community is also given to those clients and those businesses. So it's like a 360 love in, basically. Yeah.
And now that you're CEO of ICB, Ami, to what degree have you felt you needed to raise your own personal profile and be more influential in your role?
That's a good question. It's to be honest, I want to do it more and more. And I actually spent the first 6 months of the year until now really focusing on our internal team and making sure that I had the right people around me, because we have such a privileged position, being that only body that's dedicated to bookkeepers. We need to make sure that we've got a really purpose-driven, passionate team, steering the organization forward. And one of the things I've been saying at some events that we've been running recently, we run this mid-year event called the Inspire Tour. And I guess traditionally the idea was that we would go around to all parts of the UK and inspire bookkeepers, but it turned out very much like they were inspiring us, basically. I know that just sounds completely cheesy, but they are just, our bookkeepers are doing so well. And just to kind of bring that back to your question, it's really key for us, I think, that we now we have to keep raising our game, because our bookkeepers have raised their game. So we've got the right team now in place. I think we've got some really cool leaders and some great people in our kind of member services team. And so now we're at the point where, right, let's do something to really keep re-earning our members' trust, basically. And part of that is definitely raising the profile of ICB, raising the profile of bookkeepers, and of course, raising my profile as well. So a key part of that was, it was really, really nice to get this, be shortlisted as one of the top 50 women in accounting amongst some incredible women. And and what an honor. But I do think, and I can say this honestly, I'm not trying to just be humble, because I am not actually an accountant myself, and I'm not a bookkeeper either. So this really truly is, I think, an award that speaks to the power of our community. So I think it is the achievements of our members that has won me this award.
Well, as a judge on this awards panel, one of many judges, we did have thousands to sift through, and I had my batch of 50 very influential women to judge on a range of criteria. And if it was actually voted by the public, you would have a huge community behind you to put in your vote, but it was voted by independent judges. So you've won it on its merits, Amy. And I suppose it's testament to the fact that you don't need to be an accountant or a bookkeeper to influence business, to influence a community, to influence the profession, do you?
Well, I guess that is what it says. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, for me, the cause is really great. We've just onboarded somebody new in the team this morning, and I was just going through the HR person's put it into the schedule that she has an onboarding with the CEO, and I talk about the vision and the values, and it's just 4 short slides, and I was like, I really believe in this. And just talking about our commitment to continuing to empower bookkeepers and provide this kind of trusted benchmark for the profession. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's quite an easy thing to do when you really believe in what you're doing. So yeah, I think you could say you don't really need any qualifications as long as you believe in what you're doing.
Well, you're certainly an ambassador for the role, and as CEO, I know some CEOs that take very much a back seat and they let the operational people do stuff day to day. But you're someone that represents a community, represents a movement, represents a professional body. So I don't know if you nominated yourself or you were nominated for this, but you would have had to submit and gather a lot of information around certain criteria to justify that nomination. So you'll have done a huge amount of work to even just get nominated. Talk to us a little bit about your journey of pushing yourself forward like that into a more prominent role and going for an award like this.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think I think becoming CEO is one of those things where, to a certain extent, you have to forget your own personal sense of your limits. And for me, I certainly am drawn towards things that scare me. So if I feel like it's difficult, or I feel like it's hard and I can't do it, that's where I feel like I should be going. So that's kind of almost my way of sensing whether something's worthwhile. Which unfortunately does lead me into doing things where I completely mess up and I'm not prepared, to be honest. And I'm one of those people who's like, well, let's just put it in the calendar, and then I've got like a hard deadline and I know I'll do it. But sometimes it doesn't always work out. And we just ran this series of events called the Inspire Tour, like I say. And I did the opening welcome, and I did my first 30-minute opening welcome in Edinburgh at the beginning of June, and it didn't go very well. I was so nervous, and it was weird because I was chatting to everybody beforehand and really enjoying myself and talking to all of these bookkeeping practice owners who'd come out to meet us, having a great time. And then suddenly I was up there trying to think, oh, what am I trying to say that's, interesting and going to teach them something, but it's going to, be inspirational. And I kind of read something the next day. Somebody said, well, it wouldn't have, what would you have learned if you went on and it was easy? And I thought, God, that's so true. And we have to learn really to give ourselves a bit of a break. And quite often, particularly in accountancy and bookkeeping, there is this tendency towards perfectionism. And certainly as women, that is something that we do really badly, isn't it? It's just, because you're constantly striving to do everything and be perfect and, be the perfect leader, team member, possibly mother, carer, etc. It's, I think we take on a lot of pressure. And sometimes you just need to be able to just let it go and say, you know what, everyone messes up. And if I don't put myself out there, I'll never know if I can do it.
You mentioned off air, Amy, that idea of imposter syndrome, and it's that, will I be found out? Do I really deserve this? Am I worthy of this? And the other aspect to what you're saying is, I know you're in bookkeeping where it's predominantly female, but in the accounting profession generally, that is a male-dominated environment. Even though actually these days, slightly more women take accounting qualifications than men. Men are much more present in the leadership positions, the positions of influence. And there are many, many reasons for that. We've done a series of panels on this podcast with some very senior leaders of associations and female managing partners of big accounting firms to unpack that diversity angle. And some of them even talk about the defeminization that they've been through to be more accepted in a man's world. And there's a lot of that going on. But certainly there's no room for imposter syndrome. You are there, you are the brand, you are the front of it. And whether you feel like it or not, whether you're confident or not, you've got to get up on stages like this and show that you believe in what you're doing.
Yes, I do. I've not heard that phrase before, defeminization. I quite like that. Somebody actually, one of my team, he doesn't work here anymore, but he criticized me as being too nice.
Okay.
I was like, okay, your days are numbered. No more Mr. Nice Guy. But
I'll show you how nice I can be. You're fired.
It just seemed like such an odd criticism for a person that they're too nice. And I kind of, I just, obviously, you'd immediately take offense. Then I thought, well, actually, no, I can learn from this. And what I learned really was that I have no problem with being nice. I want to be nice. And, can I be nice without it being a bad thing? And yeah, I think it certainly can. But I guess that kind of speaks to that idea of, do we have to be less emotional? Do we have to be less kind and fair? No, I don't think we can. But I've been very lucky because I actually, with complete disclosure, I took over from my parents who set up ICB 27 years ago. And, so my kind of form of imposter syndrome is just always trying to prove that I'm here because I deserve it. Sure. But I think at the same time, I've been really lucky to work alongside my parents who obviously kind of ultimately do believe in me. At the same time, I did have to kind of almost felt like to a certain extent, I had to kind of pull it from their grasp to a certain extent and really sort of prove that I really wanted it, because I think they probably were a little bit reluctant to kind of put it on my shoulders, as it were. But that kind of gives you, so I suppose it's kind of a blessing and a curse, really. Yeah, always that kind of imperative to prove yourself. And I think I try to remind myself that although to be honest, I still don't believe this, but they say you are your own worst critic. But I was just thinking, I still don't know if that's really true, because probably people are thinking some terribly nasty things. But again, I think the way we deal with that often as women is to just try really, really hard and keep working harder than everybody else just to prove yourself, which is a shame, isn't it? And I read somewhere that, this idea that men will apply for a job for which they're underqualified, and women will only apply for jobs for which they're overqualified.
True.
And how just sad and self-defeating that is. But that it's really interesting to see that kind of stuff, because it helps you recognize these traits in yourself.
Well, there's a lot of strong women out there with influential voices, and you're becoming one of them in your role, who are changing the narrative from I'm too nice, I'm too feminine, I'm too soft, to that's a good thing, because in these days of mental health, mental well-being, we do need to be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more authentic and real, less domineering, less driven, less testosterone driven, if you like, that narrative of you've got to be a strong, powerful leader with no cracks in your armor. That's not realistic these days. Nobody can withstand any pressure and still convey that kind of reputation. So female leaders, if they do have a softer side, that's appealing certainly to a lot of people coming through who don't take well to that didactic, autocratic style of leadership.
And that's something that I've always really admired about the kinds of practices that we license. So bookkeeping businesses are really, really progressive employers. And it's partly because they have chosen bookkeeping because it's flexible, because they can build the practice that they want to get them where they want to be.
Yeah.
And so they tend to be very open-minded when they employ people. So they'll employ people, I had never heard this phrase before, but the 10 till 2ers, where you work from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. So you can drop the kids off quite often and pick them up again. And they are just very open-minded. And, partly they're, some of them are working part-time, they've got subcontractors, and they're really, really open to building businesses that fit around themselves. And that for me is just so cool. And very, very inspiring. And visiting all of these different cities and speaking to these women who are like, you know what, my business is really centered around me. And I just do what I want to do. So people who'd built businesses up and had staff and then decided, you know what, I don't want to have employees anymore, or I want to have Fridays off. And then they shrink their business down, and just the flexibility and that kind of empowerment. It really does feel like this big kind of feminist dream.
Well, my bookkeeper, Sarah, I talk to her more than my accountant. And she's very strong at saying, this is how I work. This is when I work. This is where I work. This is what I will do for you. I will be brilliant, but it's basically on my terms. She said that's on her terms.
And it's a service business.
Yeah.
To be able to give great service but have those boundaries is really interesting. And for some of our newer practices, I think that's often where they struggle. And that's where with more experience comes that ability to actually say, look, no, I'm confident enough in what I do that I'm going to do it on my own terms. But that's a really amazing thing.
And I don't have to always say yes to the client, and I don't have to pander to the client, and I don't have to take calls from them at 9 o'clock at night or on a weekend, because if I'm ahead of what I'm doing, then emergencies like that don't really come up. So handling your business well gives you the right to work on your terms. Let's pivot for a moment, Amy, and talk about how much your life has changed since you were nominated as one of the top 50 women. I imagine walking into shops now and down the road, you're accosted for autographs, the paparazzi are all over you, and doing these town halls and tours that you're doing, you're mobbed by people. Life's different now, surely.
It has transformed. There has been a subtle transformation, not just to my LinkedIn profile, which I changed instantly. I was like, right, that's going right in that little.
Good for you. You're proud of it. You should be.
Yeah, I am super proud. And also what I would say is we're all of the top 50 are all messaging each other on LinkedIn and being like, oh, it's so great to be alongside you, and saying all these incredibly kind of gushing, deferential things to each other, which is so great. And this is why I just love women so much. But it certainly is, like, actually, I suppose, I don't know if I've ever won anything in my life. So
but it validates what you're doing. It must do.
It is very validating, exactly. And this, and it reminds me of, things like we run an awards show for bookkeepers,
Right.
called the Luca Awards. We call it the Oscars of the bookkeeping world. And
Good. I
and
like
it's
the way you're playing that up.
yeah, we give out these little statuettes, like gold statuettes. They look a bit like an Oscar,
Love
but
that.
they're actually a monk called Luca Pacioli, who most accountants will know, I'm sure, but the godfather of accountancy. But these often we are qualifying people into this profession who don't have A levels. Sometimes they don't have proper school qualifications, let alone degrees, and that makes us a little bit different from a lot of accountants, I think. And to see these people winning these awards, and these moments are just, yeah, this is what we kind of cherish, I think, at ICB, is really being able to celebrate people who haven't necessarily been celebrated before, and particularly bookkeepers who kind of by their nature are supportive and altruistic, and perhaps not necessarily the most outgoing people who love to shout about themselves. Kind of putting that spotlight on a profession that often is seen as just a little person in the corner doing the numbers. And to think that before ICB began 27 years ago, there wasn't a professional body for bookkeepers. There weren't professional qualifications for bookkeepers. It's kind of shocking, really, considering what a valuable part of the accountancy process they're in charge of. So that's, yeah. So we were kind of born out of that desire to celebrate people that needed celebrating but weren't. So yeah, I would, all power to getting an award, being recognized. It does make you feel a bit more confident, and we all need a bit more confidence.
Well, kudos to Ignition. It's a software provider, a fintech vendor, if you like, and they have taken it upon themselves to grasp this space, to own something of the narrative, and to play up the role of women in professional services like accounting and bookkeeping. A huge amount of work they've put into creating this. A lot goes on behind the scenes, as you can imagine. And then after it's done, the publicity, the marketing, the publishing of those winners, nominees, the whole criteria, everything else, it's a massive engine that doesn't make a profit. It's not a revenue generating arm for the business, but they feel it's important. And you presumably feel the same way. It's great to get behind initiatives like this.
Yeah, it really is. It's such a unique thing, isn't it, for Ignition? And it's not, like you say, it is not easy. I think they had over 2,000 applications, all of them, painstakingly submitted, like mine. And it is something that is, it's so serious, and it is such a wonderful contribution, I think. And like I say, even just for me, like extending my network to all of these amazing women in accountancy has been, what a privilege.
It's been great talking to you today, Amy, and getting a feel for your role and how women can elevate themselves to positions to gain more voice and more influence for what they're doing. Just in closing, what advice would you give to females? And let's not go down the gender route, because there's males and females and probably a lot of things in between, but just talking to females as you and I would know them, what advice would you give to them to elevate their voice, to step into leadership roles, or if they are in leadership roles, how do they leverage the power they have in those roles by virtue of their job title or a community they oversee? What advice would you give to them to make the most of what they've got?
Gosh, how to say something succinctly when there are so many things. I think one of the things I said actually in my application or my nomination was, sometimes you've just got to get out of your own way. And I see it actually with my kids as well. The fear in you isn't a signal for you to stop doing what you're doing. That is just something that you need to accept and get past. And I say it all the time to my kids as well. It's not, bravery is not having no fear, it's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So for me, that comes a little bit easier for me because I kind of, like, if somebody says I can't do something, I'm like, oh, I will, now I'm going to do it. And whatever it is, laying the patio, trying to get a nomination for something, it doesn't really matter. So it does come more naturally to some people. So you've got to accept that. But the idea of kind of stepping out of your own way, because whatever you've got going on in your mind, that kind of that ongoing monologue, unless it serves you, unless it's trying to get you to be better, then you just have to try to ignore it and kind of flip the switch. And I think it's that kind of flipping it, kind of flipping it to being that kind of growth mindset. I love a growth mindset. I don't think I've quite achieved it myself, but I love it when I see it in other people. And we had a panel discussion at the Inspire Tour, and I was just like, wow. This practice owner was talking about how her clients, even the bad clients, help her be better and help her learn how to provide the service better. And it's that idea that whatever lessons you're learning are just ways to help you achieve something new. And all the bad things are potentially opportunities to, again, learn something new and kind of progress through where you want to be. So I think it's, learning that. And again, also kind of to provide a kind of simile with like an analogy with bookkeepers. Although I kind of lost my train of thought there. Yes, that's it. No, I'll probably stop talking about that because we're in a podcast. That's why you cut it out, can't you? But, Sheryl Sandberg had a great book, didn't she? Lean In, which was a great kind of call to arms for women. But I think also what I would say is lean on, and don't be afraid to lean on your network and lean on people who inspire you. Because particularly for women, I think if, people reach out to me all the time and, ask for information or support, or, and I'm trying to also, as I raise my profile, meet other women and try to get support from them. So make like a good bookkeeper, I suppose, and remember to lean on your network, because people love to help.
Ami Copeland, CEO of the Institute of Certified Bookkeepers. That's been a joy to speak to you today. Thanks for stepping up. Thanks for leaning in. Thanks for sharing some of your stories and for being a great example to the female professionals out there. As a father of 2 daughters, I totally get that as well. It's nice to champion the cause. And in these days of diversity and inclusion and everyone having a say, it's been great to hear some of your passion and your insights. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Rob.